clear across Manhattan because their unit was on the far east side. He had to get across Manhattan to get to the World Trade Center. He said that was a project in itself with all this chaos going on. He said he pulled up out of the tunnel, saw the second plane hit the other tower, pulled this
Я
thing
потом добавлю
and
субтитры.
parked it under a walkway because he was trying to protect the truck. Then he said we went into the North Tower. Our headquarters was on the main floor. We went up as far as we could go, bringing people down. And he said, the building's shaking, making noise, but he said, we never thought that building would collapse. He said, that was not in our thinking at all. And he said, I'm in there bringing people down. And finally he said, all the lights went out, and I'm still bringing people down. Then finally he said, I didn't see anybody. And he said, I waited about 15 minutes. Then I called the commander. I said, I don't see anybody. He said, well, then get back down here to the main floor. They got back to the main floor, and the commander said, you guys get out of the building. And I think he had a premonition, but I don't know. These guys said that he immediately wanted them out. And he said, the driver is sitting on the back of this truck, pouring water over his head. The rest of the guys on this truck were behind this truck. When all of a sudden he grabbed his partner and jumped up and said, let's get out of here. And the entire North Tower collapsed on this truck. This truck's on the roadway. Under the road is a parking garage. And this thing is going right down to the basement of the North Tower. Everybody on this truck got under ladder 42's fire truck, which was behind us, and went right down the basement. And they all survived. The only man that didn't make it was Matty Ryan, and he was the battalion commander and didn't get out of the building. But the rest of these guys survived on this truck, which is a pretty amazing thing in itself. Well, then the pictures you see, NBC News was there and did a video of them extracting this truck. If you get on Ladder 18's website right now, you can see it. That's on our website too. But we got absolute proof that it was there. And then to tell you how I got this, I tried for years and got nothing. I contacted the mayor, the New York, the police chief, like the governor, everybody. Nobody responded. Finally got a hold of Congressman Stivers. And he's a general at the time. And he got me the helicopter at one point. And so I said, I need this stuff. He said, let me see what I can do. He called Washington, then he called the girl at the hangar. He says, you call that girl at the hangar for the stuff being stored at the Kennedy Airport. So I called this girl. She says, what are you looking for? I said, what do you got? She says, why don't you come look? I said, I'm on the way. I didn't know. You only get one piece. That's all they ever give anybody. Well, when I got there, she come out. She had this notepad. And I'm looking at her, and I said, now listen. I said, I want some stuff. I want to put it in a building. I want lots of stuff. And she looked at me and said, you know what? I got a history major. I've got stuff I've not showed anybody. And Congressman Stivers told me to give you anything you wanted. And boy, did that open the door. She went out, uncovered a police car. She said, this black police car was the first one there, brought back to the first anniversary of 9/11. You want it? I said, yes. She marked it off. Most of it looked like this. This car was intact. It was smashed. It was busted out windows and all that, but it's intact. It's sitting over there. And then she took me, she said, I think I can get you a Suburban too, which was also there, and it's not totally destroyed, but if the windows are knocked out, I said, it's sitting over there. She took me in another room. That's a sign from the base of the World Trade Center. It says World Trade Center Financial District Subway. It's got the two towers engraved on it. And she said, you want that? I said, yeah, okay. Then she took me in another room, 19-foot section of the antenna off the North Tower. I got that over there. She took me in another room, 17-foot section of the stairway. She said, you want that? I said, yeah. I said, well, the other half that's on display in New York. Okay, I'll take it. Then she called me, said, you know, I found this 2,000-pound piece of concrete that you got to have. I said, what is it? She says it came from the wall of the North Tower basement. Somebody had painted a heart and a cross on it and written, remember our three brothers and all the rest killed at 9/11. It's sitting over there. I said, I'll take it. But it's a huge big thing. Well, then saw the fire truck. I said, I got to have that fire truck. But then you realize once I get this stuff, I got to figure out how to get it here. And everything you see here has been given to me. The land, the building, all of it's been donated. And when I get something that I got to move, I got to talk somebody into moving it for free. And I've been pretty lucky because I'm very passionate about what I do. Well, anyhow, I'm thinking, I'll never get this back. So I took some pictures of it. And then finally I called the gal when I was on the freeway. I said, I want the fire truck. She said, Warren, I knew you was going to want that fire truck. She says, it belongs to the New York Fire Department. It's tied up in a lawsuit, and you're going to have to deal with a New York lawyer. I said, oh, man, that's going to be fun. So I called this woman up and says, I want to come get the. She said, listen, she said, that fire truck has never been cleaned for human remains. It's time and lawsuit, and you're not going to get that fire truck. I said, yes, I'm going to get that fire truck. Took me 8 months. I got that fire truck. And then I got to figure out how to get it here. So I went to BST Trucking on 7. They got big trucks. If you can get by the secretary, and she's screaming about the nuts, and I was considered a nut. And I finally got to the boss with that. And he said, well, I tell you what, I can hold the rest of the stuff with the fire truck. I can't hold it if you get it. It's too big. So anyhow, I went to Kokosing. They got big trucks. So I had a picture. I showed it to the girl, and she got the boss. And the boss got excited. He said, okay, we'll see what we can do. Then come back and says, you know what? We can't haul this, but we're going to hire a company in Cleveland to do it. I said, but he didn't say he's going to pay for it. So I called the company in Cleveland. I said, what's this going to cost? $5,740. I go, oh my golly. So then coming toward the end, when I finally got it released, I called the girl at the hangar, and she said, Warren, we don't have anything big enough to load this. The first quote I had was 19,000. The lowest I had was 9,000. And I called the guy in Cleveland. I said, can you find somebody to load this thing at the hangar? He said, well, we'll get back to you. Well, he told me, he said, yeah, it'll cost you $6,240. So, man, this is all adding up here. I had the 2 police cars sitting there. One of my life members was out there. Said to me, what did you say it was going to cost to move that truck? I said, $5,740. He pulled out his checkbook, wrote a check for $6,000, and handed it to me. I said, how am I going to get loaded? Went to Kokosing and said, can you help? He said, we're going to haul it for free. So all I needed was $240. Here it is. We got it forever. And there was a couple other things that happened. I said, now I got to put it in a building, okay? Well, I did Bob Evans and Dave Thomas. I did all their photography. I built sets, and I knew exactly how I wanted to display this truck. I went to 3 architects where I found one that was on my wavelength, the way I wanted this thing built. And so I picked him. Then I go to Kokosing and say, we got to figure out what this is going to cost. Well, all this is happening, and you really, I called the girl. I said, there's one more thing I want. She said, what's that? I said, you took me in a room. There were 19 flats stacked high with the marble walls and the floor from the World Trade Center. I says, I want all 19 of them. She says, you're kidding me. You want them all? I said, yeah. She said, let me see if somebody wants them. She finally called me back and said, Warren, nobody wants them. They're yours. So I told the architect, when you design the building, you're going to be standing on the floor of the World Trade Center when you're looking at the fire truck. Around it, I'm going to incorporate it in the floor. I'm going to put pieces of walls and a banister on the wall that you can touch. And a piece of the fire truck, because my firemen all want to touch this, and I told you I was a fireman in the 1950s, so it has a special meaning to me. I got an FBI agent who's in Washington, D.C., and he come in here one day, said, I joined the Army because of this. And he said, I became a ranger, then I got out and became an FBI agent. He comes to visit his mother, and every time he comes here, he comes to see the truck, because that was the reason why he started. We got to save it. I got to get it in a building, and now we got all this stuff going on. And I told you about the Holocaust collection I have. Well, I figured, okay, let's just build another wing, and we'll put the Holocaust in there. And I got this little gal that volunteers for me, Annie. And she was a helicopter maintenance person. She was a door gunner in El Salvador, and she's a smart woman. She says, you need an educational facility, a place for people to put programs. I said, it's good. We'll put that in there. And then I said, okay. Then we do the Freedom Train. I got all this stuff. John Wayne gave Ross the idea for the Freedom Train, and I got a Winchester rifle that was his and John Wayne's. He gave me all his stuff. So it needs to be in a building. So that will have the Holocaust, that, and the American Freedom Train. So anyhow, now we're talking millions. So that's basically where we're at. You can take pictures if you want. If you want, I'll take you over to the Rickenbacker house unless you want to do it, Dave.
I can do it if you want me to.
Okay. All right.